Hey, yeah, we got audio now. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Shufflebus. It's Tuesday
Always
night.
quality content here on the Shuffle
Always,
Bus.
always, man. I'm just trying to do too much here, but we are ready to kick off a Tuesday night. We're going to get right into the action tonight with a carousel match between Matt Bowers and I. So, for those of you that don't know the carousel format, Fighting Walloon is putting this on, and it's really kind of a neat idea. He assigns a random Phoenix Born to each player, and then a random three dice colors. And then you have to build a deck from those three dice colors in that Phoenix Born, and then play your opponent. So I was assigned Koji with Ceremonial, Time, and Nature, and Matt was assigned Aerodel with Time, Nature, and Sympathy. So I suspect for Matt tonight, we're going to see lots of, from the Sympathy side, probably things like Salamander Monk. Yeah, it's been really fun, Creep Dog, for sure. I think we're going to see some hoppers from Matt on that 8 Battlefield Aerodel. And we're going to see a Frostback Bear from Matt, I'm pretty sure, with that nature setup.
It's really
And
not fair that he got Aerodel and Nature.
I
That
know,
doesn't.
but he can't play the Gilder because he didn't get Charm. So I mean, it's a little less impactful. Obviously, Gilder and Aerodel love each other with Water Blast and Gilder Pings. So I did get
Right.
Fester. So if Matt does go tall on me, but I mean, I don't see that in these colors. So unless he decides to play something like a Brawler,
His right. So the only knights in that color are Huntmaster and
right,
Gornrock.
right, exactly.
Though if there was a format for Gornrock, this might be it. Uh,
I'm just talking to Matt here. But we'll get started here very quickly. So, yeah, Carousel's super awesome. I'm going to jump over to the game, and then we'll, I'll come back to you guys after that. So you'll see me pull my headphones off like I did the other day and reduce my chat. So don't, you guys feel free to chat all you like through this. I think Matt with Aerodel is probably playing a real Phoenix Born and probably a pretty good advantage in this
he's
matchup.
got he's got 5 Nature dice to your 3, so that puts him at a big advantage.
Yeah,
I think that his Phoenix Born has advantage over you, and I think that Crescendo. I think that Sympathy is a little bit of an upgrade over Ceremonial.
for sure, for sure.
So
All right, guys, we'll see you all very soon. But thank you, and I'll be back after this game is over, which probably won't take very long. See you soon.
All right, chat. It's just you and me. So, like I was saying just now, I think that Jesse's at a disadvantage here. Aerodome. Like, what would you pick if you got to pick? Like, obviously they're assigned randomly, but would you like? I guess I would pick Odette over Aerodel, but Aerodel has to be real close to the top. Maybe I'd pick Jessa. I don't know. Maybe Harold. But all of them are kind of in that same close realm there, and Koji is kind of not. But we'll see. It also is unfortunate for Jesse that he didn't get assigned Sympathy, because a lot of the status token things prior to the time expansions were Sympathy. So yeah, he has some stuff to do with it in the time dice, but no Explosive Growth, no Squall Stallion, no Guilt Link. Like, the Koji ability is kind of very meh here. He has like, well, I guess there's like Omen Bringer and Lizard he could play. But I wonder if Matt's on Lizard too. I haven't actually cast the game with Lizards yet, so. Oh, and they're both in Survival to Fittest colors. Are we gonna do some sweet stuff? Warrior, I don't think that he's on Fallen because he's only on 3 ceremonial dice. But that's a good call out. That could have been something you could do with the big Koji board. Though he doesn't, in those colors and with Koji, he doesn't have the ability to like get the second book. He has to draw it naturally. So you have to do a little more work to really get online. So we're seeing a Raptor Herder meditated. Matt with not a great roll. He rolled all basics on his times. Jesse with an insane roll, actually. Oh, that's true. Where you get recollect for fallen books, so he could have been on like heavy meditate yourself into the books. That's kind of a cheeky thing to do in a casual tournament like this. That's like, honestly, it's probably pretty good. Matt declares that the shuffler is broken after meditating 2 raptor herders away, or 2 massive growths away, and 2 raptor herders. There's the frostback bear. I assume there'll be a bear on both sides. Yep, and so Jesse is on Lizard because he plays Ember Root. That's a good thing to Koji for sure. That's true, Warrior. Generosity is a card that I think is very cool. You also have the option to play like Foresight, like that sees a bunch of cards. Here we see a Turtle Guard book from Matt. This is just going to be some kind of like 4-book Aerodel. And there's the Omen Bringer. Okay, so Jesse's on full counter strat, which I'm not sure I'm a big fan of. I think we'll see how many other things he has going on in his deck, like if he's on hoppers or whatever. But you can only Koji one of those 2 things. So having them both seems a little aggressive, though I do like the idea of Omen. If I was forced to play Koji and I wasn't on some kind of fallen thing, Omen Bringer would be way up there because it really kind of gives you an additional book slot when it attacks. And there's the Time Hopper, so he will have the counters to charge up both the Lizard and the Omen Banger. And what was Matt's other book here? Okay, so he's on Lizard, Frostback, Time Hopper, Turtle Guard. So this was kind of like, again, just 4-book Aerodel, but he has the Time Hopper Lizard thing. Jesse makes his own Lizard. Not very threatening into the board of Matt's guys, and Matt just fires off the Water Blast right away. Which I think is good for Jesse. Jesse would rather have his Lizard Water Blasted than his Omen Bringer, I think, depending on his first 5. And he first 5 to Widows. That's aggressive. It's pretty good here, though. Like, it really kind of stymies like Matt's Lizard now. I mean, I guess Matt still has the thing of like, make Lizard, Jesse attacks it, he PB guards, and then next turn he goes Time Hopper Lizard attack, and he gets to ping off the Spider. But he just makes a Bear. Bear also answers the Spiders pretty well. Jesse just goes full face. This is real aggressive. Yeah, Jesse didn't make a hopper because he wants to leave up the frog dice to kill this bear, I assume. But honestly, he could have done that at any point in the turn. One thing this does is it allows the hopper to it allows the hopper to like attack the bear later in the turn after the PB guard is gone. So that's pretty good. Oh, now it won't though, because he has Turtle Guard. Yeah, unfortunately the Omen Banger is looking pretty soft to these 2/3s here. There's the bringer. Now, the question, do you think that Jesse has a flash strike? Because that would be like the gas here. There's the Ember Root. I think Jesse's last card is probably Fate Reflection, because I know he's been really high on that card lately. But if it's a flash strike, it's going to be so good. So he just Koji's the thing. He doesn't time hopper, but he does get to reset his lizard book, so that's cool. And yeah, the bird is guarded by the turtle. So we'll see if what Jesse does here. I assume the next play is just make a lizard. So Matt makes a time hopper, attacks with lizard. It's going to get through for damage and kill a spider. That's really good. Oh, he's going to attack the spider. Oh, he's going to attack the spider with time hopper. Okay. Just eat up the PB guard. This way the lizard is free to shoot the other lizard if it wants. And I don't know that I like that play from Jesse. I guess this sets up like, I don't know, lizard attack plus frog ping next turn. All right, so there's the Fate Reflection, which he redirects the lizard ping to the Frostback Bear, so that was some good value. I did call him on the Fate Reflection. I still think that Flash Strike would have been better in this first 5, but because he'd still have an Omen Bringer in play. But we'll see how this ends up. So lizard eats lizard. Oh, lizard doesn't eat lizard? What happened here? Oh no, because he wait. So I guess Jesse chose not to deal the damage because he was afraid of the Fate Reflection. I think you're supposed to deal the damage there, and if you get Fate Reflected, you get Fate Reflected. And this is exactly why, because if it's not a Fate Reflection, then you get 2 for 1 essentially by him like countering your damage dealt by just not having it, and then also getting his 2 shadows off. So going into round 2, Matt at a small advantage with his turtle over the time hopper. Time hopper took the damage. Oh, there it is. I see. Never mind. Thank you, Carl. I was trying to read it and it just said like attack, raise the attack value 1 and may deal damage. But then I found the time hopper is destroyed. Okay, so that's correct. He played it good. Don't listen to me. Jesse meditates a survival and a lick wounds to make turtles. And attacks with time hopper. I guess this is okay. This, I mean, you're like telling your opponent that you don't have second time hopper book, but that's probably like very low impact. Matt, on the other hand, does have second time hopper book. And Jesse has a time hopper book in the discard pile. Aridel's so good, man. Like, literally, she killed a lizard last time, but she just like looks at that omen banger and she's like, you never get to do anything ever again. And obviously she can kill the lizard too. That's a little better for Jesse because he's not like trading dice so terribly, but the omen bringer being kind of like the engine of Jesse's deck here, just being turned off by side action Aridel is pretty rough. Call upon the realms, huh? That was not a card I expected to see, but it's fine. Matt definitely doesn't really need to do anything here with the turtle guard up. He's not in danger of essentially anything happening. Jesse just goes to face with the lizard. I don't know how I feel about this attack. I mean, I guess you say like trade your turtle for me or bust. But I think that Matt's okay with that because he knows that there's essentially no other threats that Jesse can play unless it's like a Hammer Knight or something. Makes another turtle. Very safe. Jesse does have second time hopper. Interesting. I would have thought that if you had second time hopper, you would leave the other time hopper untapped to get the two rabbits, especially the Koji battlefield being ginormous. Then we see an Ember Root Lizard eating an ice trap from Matt's side. Ice trap is such a great card. All right, here's the Omen Bringer. Does Jesse have the Fate Reflection? I assume that this is going to get immediately Aridel. Yep. And he does not have the Fate Reflection. Yeah, this is not looking ideal for Jesse coming out of round 2. Matt has one more dice, one more untapped book that is also a Frostback Bear, so it's not like just another book. There's the bear. Jesse plays second Omen Banger book. Okay. I was like, one thing that would get Jesse out of this round pretty good would be a Survival of the Fittest. I saw one go to his discard pile. I don't know if he's got a second one. Huntmaster. Survival less good now that he has the 2/3 that won't die to it. And Matt throwing all caution to the wind, not playing around the survival at all, just putting more counters on his Huntmaster for more uses. I think that I would have put a status on the prospect bear there, just in case of survival of the fittest. Oh, he meditated a survival. So there's only one left. Maybe this won't be a survival of the fittest game. Here we have a buffed panther. This is, I assume, will be a PB guard. Yep. Yep, and there's the time hopper, put a counter on Omen Bringer. I'm going to assume this is an attack. Again, Flash Strike looking absolutely insane here. And just the constant 2-2s versus 2-3s, just getting Jesse. Though Matt makes his bear a 3-3 and a crash. Yep. What is Jesse gonna do? Make his other lizard, okay. And a time hopper to make an additional time hopper. Pretty good. And Matt's time hopper gets to eat a lizard because of the Huntmaster. And now Matt has a bunch of 2-3s staring down a squad of 1-1s, and not looking great for Jesse. Jesse sends the squad. Yeah, this is fine. He would need a fourth one to be able to kill one of the guys. I guess if he had committed 2 of them, he would have been able to kill Turtle this turn, and maybe that's a little better. But he might just be on like draw survival of the fittest or bust here. Matt makes another bunny. Gets in there for 3. Let's see if Jesse has something here in the tank, though. Matt getting to go first means the survival of the fittest might not even be good enough. All these rabbits are too scared. They're so fearful. Oh, I lied about the turtle also. He wouldn't have been able to kill Turtle because of the turtle ability. Oh, and I guess he's just dead to Turtle Bug activate attack. Yep, lots of bunnies. Matt says, wait. He actually can't kill him because of the rolling no hourglasses, but still seems pretty pedestrian to finish this game. Yeah, that's the second time this, like, Matt has rolled the dice 3 times, and in round 1 and round 3 here, he rolled all basics on his time dice. That's kind of funny. So just make some Frostback Bear and passes. This will put Jesse on. I guess he's going to meditate probably, so he can have the play for next turn. But yeah, this was an interesting game. It's like these decks are so similar. This really shows kind of like shows off like the power of Aerodel as compared to Koji, where Koji is kind of like a big build around me. Like you have to build a deck specific to Koji, whereas in these things where you get Delta random Phoenix Born and random colors, like Aerodel's so good because you just do kind of whatever you want and be okay. So he healed 2 and he played a Raptor Herder. So on 2 blockers, he would take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and go to 14. So I actually wouldn't die, which is kind of funny. Matt sends squad anyways. Interesting here that Jesse will have the option to block where he doesn't kill a bunny, and that will put Matt on full battlefield. Oh, but he has a crescendo, so just I still don't think it's lethal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I'll go to 15. Matt Bauer says I counted wrong. I'm going to ask him real quick if he teaches math. He says I'm tired. Fighting Walloon, I don't know if you're in here, but this carousel tournament has done really well. And everybody seems real hyped about it. So congratulations for that. Like, I've watched several of the games and it seems really fun. By attacking there, Jesse has lethaled himself, I think. Unless he can make a blocker. as a side action because he cleared up a battlefield spot for Matt to make the last rabbit to. Oh, he has the lick wounds. Okay. I think that's all the lick wounds. Yep. Lick wounds is kind of like a blocker for one turn. Matt has meditated for horse. What does he need a horse for? A polarity mage for massive growth? Okay. Jesse makes a lizard. I guess that's fine. Whatever you make is gonna just essentially. I guess he has one more turn to make a chump blocker for the massive growth there. But I think that Matt can go like frog ping lizard, play massive growth, next turn frog ping attack, and Jesse will have to like sack an omen bringer to it. Which again doesn't kill Jesse, but puts Jesse very close to dead when he's like spending all his dice just to block. This has been a weird game where we had like multiple activations of double rabbit. It's not something I expected to see, especially with both players on a bunch of nature dice. There's the massive growth. I don't know what else is in Matt's hand, and I'm not sure it makes a lot of difference, but I think he should have nature pinged the lizard so that he can force Omen Bringer block next turn. Unless he has a way to like clear up another spot in his board. How many of you guys have played with Omen Bringer? Have you found its like come into playability to matter at all? I'm sure that I've talked about this before. I think it's better to have that ability than for it to be blank, but it never has seemed super impactful. I know I talked about this before because I remember talking to Carl about it. I guess Aerodel Water Blast is essentially the same as the double frog ping play I was talking about. I remember saying when Carl was in the chat, when we were doing the previews, that it would be cooler if you could do it to yourself, that the Omen Bringer, you could like stack your own deck. But stacking your opponent's deck, like I said, it's like, 5% better than if it was blank. Maybe more than that, but and fighting, you're totally right about the attacking thing. Like You had to put a lot of resources into like getting this thing to attack just to make yourself another dice sink. Jesse just attack with it. Wait. Oh, Matt's just attacking the Omen Bringer. Okay. And then he frogs his own Time Hopper. And then Jesse attacks with his Lizard. And kills a Time Hopper. Of his own, I guess. And Matt makes a turtle. I was curious if he was going to make a turtle or if he was going to make a Time Hopper. I think Hopper's like almost, since Jesse decided to attack, I think Time Hopper is like better. He's just like attack him right now, but maybe not. Maybe with Jesse going first at the top of the round, he wants the unit guard. Interesting how that round, like, I thought he was dead. But Matt rolling 3 basics on those time dice made the thing go all the way to round 4. I still think Jesse's in just a terrible spot, but obviously, like, that dice roll really saved Jesse. Like, literally saved him, I guess. Massive Growth doing its job of being a 2-action, 3 dice removal spell of a 2/2. Jesse in the tank trying to figure out how he's not going to take 2 damage. With 2 Frostback Bears in play and no blockers for them, it seems difficult. Jesse's still in the tank. This was a rage quit. JK. Jesse would never rage quit. Makes an Omen Bringer. And meditates. Okay. Meditates into 3 turtles. What could 3 turtles do here? I guess if he has an outmatch, is he still dead? It would be block, block. Yeah, still dead. And we have another Huntmaster Guide. And an attack with many men. So many men. Yep, pretty good. Frostback Bear, pretty good. Turtle Guard, pretty good. Matt just had a pile of good cards, except a pile of good cards and some massive gross. I don't know what your prize structure is for this, if there's anything. I don't mean literal prizes, just like how the seating will break down, but congrats to Matt for moving on, I guess. And thanks for playing on stream, Matt. I don't know if you're here.
Hello. I think I'm back now.
You are back.
Hold on one second. Turn my headset back on. There we go. I'm back.
You are back.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I expected the outcome to be.
Well, it was funny that him rolling 3 basics on his time dice actually bought you an entire round.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you guys were essentially playing the mirror match, and he had Aerodel and a Frostback Bear. So like,
I just needed one of those survival of fittest to hit my hand. One of those two. And they both got meted away. So
were you only playing 2?
Yeah, I only played 2 in this deck. I went to third Widows over second survival. And
I think that's fine. I mean, those I mean, just looking at the way this played out, you're at a big disadvantage because he had 2 3s and you had 2 2s.
Sure.
So like obviously survival is a big impact card.
I think the bigger impact was 4 book to 3 book. Like I had to build. Yeah. You know, I had a smaller spell board to work with. I think the rest of our cards were pretty similar across the board. Obviously, he had access to Polarity Mage.
Your decks were extremely similar, and Polarity Mage was like nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like Crescendo is real big.
I just never gave him good targets for Crescendo. I did Warrior, but I did. The spirit of this competition wasn't to build like top tier decks, right? The spirit of this competition was to build something casual and fun. I don't like Fallen. I've never liked Fallen. Every time I play him, I just hate him and wish I was playing something else. So you're probably never going to see me put a Fallen deck on my side of the table. That's a hot take there. I love Omenbringer. I think it's awesome. I think it's one of the best 2 dice summons in the game. I don't care whether you put a status token on it or not. Just bottoming cards has won me. I mean, it won me my first round of Carousel.
I think that I would rank it as the 4th, 5th best one.
I don't know about that. I don't know if I agree with that.
I think that, I mean, it depends on if you count Frostback Bear or not. So like,
no, I don't count Frostback Bear because it's got a book tax. Okay. So you never can make a Frostback Bear actually 2 dice. Over the course of a game, it gets close to 2, but it's not 2.
Okay, so I think that Lioness is better.
I like, obviously, but I could play Lala. I don't like False Demon. I don't like False Demon because why would I want to spend time pinging units that are already exhausted? I think, sure. I mean, okay, Lioness and Mindfog, I would agree are better 2/2s.
My other choice.
Yeah, I like my Lioness and Mindfog, but I can't play those in this deck. So
right, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I think your deck was fine.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was just unfortunate because I think I had an opportunity in round 2 if I drew Survival where I clear his entire board and not mine. And that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I mean, like literally like 10 minutes before the stream, I was building a Koji deck that has Survivals in it because I think that that's like an interesting synergy.
Yeah.
Though when I was done with it, I was like, man, this should just be a Lulu. But
sure.
Obviously, you didn't have that option in the Carousel tournament because you were given Koji.
I've been playing Survival and non-Lulu, non-Koji decks quite a bit in testing. Actually, I think it's very strong.
I mean, I think it's a powerful card in any Phoenix Born. It's just Lulu, Koji, and Rin specifically have a lot of synergy with it because PB abilities.
Right, but I don't think you even need the PB ability. So where I have had the most success is in these swarmy decks where you can go really wide like this. And then you go to your top of round, you take your top of round swing, they maybe block some stuff or they think they're going to get in for a whole bunch or whatever. But generally speaking, you're in a position where they've got 1 or 2 units on the board and you've gone around them. And if they don't attack with those 1 or 2 units because they, they just don't sometimes, they're expecting you to drop something big because you've spent no dice up to this point. They play a little more conservative. Your second action in that round is survival, and you just blow them up. And I've done it a lot in testing. A lot.
Yeah, like I said, I think survival is a powerful card and just fine outside of those Phoenix Borns, but I was just like rattling off things that have a good synergy with it.
Like I think, if my opponent, if I go, okay, I got 3 or 4 units on the field, my opponent's got 1 or 2, and I just attack into them for 3 or 4 damage, 9 times out of 10 they're not going to block it, and they also don't feel any pressure to like counter swing. And so survival gives real pressure on you have to counter swing at that point, which I think works in your favor when you start talking about then playing the rest of the round out, and you don't have to survival at that point. Just the threat of it's enough. Yeah, I mean,
in an open deck tournament, it's a lot less likely to be able to work that way. Like,
but I know, like
tournament, it's much easier to play around than.
I mean, I just bluffed Fester for round 2 on Matt. Because I had the ceremonial dice up on that side, and so he didn't put like when I attacked into his Airedale, he didn't put a bear in front of it because he was afraid of the Fester, or the Huntmaster. Actually, was what it was. He didn't put the Huntmaster in front of it because he was afraid of the Fester. And I really was kind of like, I needed more of my removal tools to come up. I mean, I have 3 Festers in the list, but I drew 2 of them here in this last round. So
were you playing Flash Strike?
No, I didn't fit it into this list.
You made like 6 attacks that game, and I'm like, if he has the Flash Strike, it's going to be insane.
Yeah, no,
there are just so many times it would have been so good.
This deck just didn't have the room for it when you start looking at the deck. So I'll pull the deck up. It is what it is. Like, there was 2 versions I built. One was a Frostback Bear version where you just use Omenbringer to untap Frostback Bear, and obviously, like, that felt pretty good.
Right, and you don't have to play hoppers then. That was one thing. Like when you played the Lizard book and then you played the Omenbringer book, I'm like, okay, well, now this deck is really like built around me, because the Koji gives you 1 for free,
right? But
you need additional stuff if you're trying to make both work.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the list I played. It just got really tight on spaces. And I did think there was a potential world where the battlefield gets clogged up and the 1x Molten Gold could be enough to get there. And the 1x Fire Archer for the same reason. Like, if I just miss it by 1, that kind of thing. But
so are you required to play a certain...
I lost you, Neil. Neil disconnected, I think, folks. Yeah, I mean, I agree that's the best use of it, Inquisitor. Like, obviously, playing top of round with it's as good as a kneel at top of round in many cases. It's better than a kneel because the battlefield is eliminated. It costs more dice, obviously, but it's in good colors, and it's not very expensive because there's no power sites involved at all. So, I think that's a pretty reasonable place to be on it. I just wanted to try to see if we could get small incremental advantages off of the Ember Root Lizards, but it's hard. I mean, that's hard against Airedale, right? Like, specifically, a deck full of 2/2s and 0/2s is a tough place for Airedale, which is why I did run the 3x Fate Reflections, because I still think 3x Fate Reflection is very good. Also, just they don't want to spend hard removals like 2 Shadows. I know Matt did use a 2 Shadows on me, but they would rather use ping damage, and Fate Reflection just gets them for that, and it's very good against crescendos and things as well. So, hey, he's back.
Yeah, I think I have a problem with my video card overheating, because
really?
just like obviously this happens in stream sometimes where I just like go dark.
Yeah. Can you still hear me when that happens?
No.
Okay. So that seems more like an internet connection thing.
Well, it's definitely a CPU thing. Like, it's either my video card or my processor, because the computer restarts.
Sure.
Like it's not it just like goes dark and restarts. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Which sucks because my computer like was very expensive. But I'm gonna have to have somebody smarter than me look at it, because I've done some.
See, I don't
myself.
I don't spend too much time on computers anymore, messing around with it for those reasons. I just want to be able to pick up and play games and not have to worry about troubleshooting my PC. I spend enough time fixing PCs just for the stream.
Right.
I don't need any additional headache on that.
So anyway, my question when I like got kicked was, are you required to play a certain number of each color?
No.
So you could have just played like.
I'm not even required to play all three. I could go down to 2, or I could go mono. I don't. Because
to me, it seemed like the widows were not very good, and you could have played like some additional threats, or the additional survival, or like the flash strikes.
Well, and I mean, I've only played this deck like twice, right? And
right, sure.
One of those times was against you, where we were playing a prison deck. So like, I don't really know. I can't evaluate how this deck performs in a regular match that way.
Right. I like the festers. Obviously, that's always good when you have frog things. I just put on the Discord that I don't like Fire Archer.
Yeah. I just have a 1 of in here. It's a closer.
And yeah, right. Like 1 is like the correct number. Yeah. Hammer Knight, obviously good. And then the Widow is a powerful card. But
where I get value out of it, Neil, is like in certain conditions, like you saw there at the end, like there are board states where I need to clear my hoppers in order to turn the status tokens back on. So I'm exchanging a hopper for 2 widows in that environment if I want to, right? Like I can ping my hopper, make 2 widows, and then attack. And I've changed out a hopper to 2 2/1s.
Yes. It seems like you're not aggressive enough for widows to be good.
Well, it didn't look very aggressive against an Aerodel, for sure. Yeah, but I think that's a product of playing Aerodel, not other. I mean, other PBs don't have, built-in 2 damage removal.
Well, yeah, it was super bad for you when you like lean so hard on Omenbringer and she has Water Blast. Like,
well, that's why I played the Fate Reflections, but I just didn't draw them. I had it in the first round, and that was it.
Yeah,
but
what did he fate? What did he Water Blast the first round that you didn't fate?
The Amber Root Lizard, because it had no status tokens on it. I baited that first lizard out, is what I did. See, okay. So the way this deck works. I don't remember
what he had in play. You get an extra damage.
He had nothing in play. That's the problem, because I went 3 book. Because I could only go 3 book and not 4 book. When he played 4th book, I had to do something. Like I could have passed at that particular stage, but I don't think I'm gaining anything by passing there.
I think making the lizard is fine. I was just trying to remember if you could have gotten an extra damage out of your reflection or not. But if you didn't have any play, then you definitely couldn't.
No, I got it out of
right. You saved a hopper or you saved a hopper or a lizard and pinged a hopper was what happened.
Right. Yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
Obviously that's just fine.
Yeah. I mean, I felt pretty good coming out of round 1. I just needed to draw a Fate Reflection in round 2, and I just didn't. It's not Fate Reflection, a Survival of the Fittest. Actually, both would have been good. If I'd had a Fate Reflection in round 2, when I'd put the first Omenbringer in play, I could have Fate Reflected into a board that would have been a pretty big blowout at that point. When he Water Blasted that Omenbringer.
Right. I think Fate Reflection is very good in that matchup, obviously because of Water Blast. Like you're always going to have something good to hit with it.
Right. But I just knew, playing time, he was going to have 2 shadows, so I was not really high on knights as a matchup. So I just included a singular knight. Spaceship Driver coming back in with a sub.
Yeah, that's me.
Automatic sub.
Twitch told me that I could show that to the chat. Yeah, I think your deck is pretty good for this type of tournament where you get dealt some stuff and.
Yeah, I think honestly, Ceremonials it leaves a lot to be desired if you're not playing like Jessa or Brennan.
You hit the good parts of it, right? Like you have the Festers and the Hammer Knight, which maybe you could have a second Hammer Knight. I don't know. We talked about during AshCon last week. I'm actually like the card Crimson Bomber is growing on me.
Mm-hmm.
And Widows is very powerful. Like I think Widows is fine in your deck. I think your dice is a little strained for Widows.
I don't really have anything, but I don't have anything that really pulls anything off of the ceremonial dice besides the Hammer Knight, the Fire Archer,
right.
and the Fester,
It's just stopping you from playing other nature cards. Essentially, is what it's doing. Because you don't have
what nature cards? Like that was where I was like, when I started building this deck, I was like, what nature cards do I really need?
Like you can have other ice traps. You could also like I really think that the flash strikes would have been great.
Well, that's a time. That's another time. So then I got to add more time dice types.
You could trade us like you could do like just like one sympathy two ceremonials out, one time in, one nature in, and swap to like another ice trap and some flash strikes. And I don't know if that's better, but it's definitely like more consistent. And it just the way that battlefield played out, there were just so many times when the flash strike would have been so crazy good.
Sure.
But yeah, and where you're right. Choke is a good card. I don't think it's like a 3 of anything. It's usually just like a 1 of because you want a first 5 to get certain Phoenixborns, but.
And I just played the Fate Reflection as a response to the Phoenixborn instead of the Choke. That's what I
right. Yeah, I don't think that you should have played Choke. Do you get to know like what your opponent's playing?
Nope. Other than just dice, I know the dice, and I knew the Phoenixborn. Same thing. Same information.
You knew he was on Aerodel.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just didn't feel like I thought like if he's on Aerodel and nature, like I'm not gonna stick a Frostback Bear no matter what I do. Right, and
you're much more likely to stick a Frostback Bear than either Lizard or Omen Bringer.
But not really that much. And if he plays Turtle because he's on time as well, then the bear looks really sad.
I mean, the bear is better than Lizard or Omen Bringer against either of the cards you just named. Like it is, because it's a 2/3. It survives the battle with them, and the 2 cards that are there don't.
In an individual comparing one card to one card, I agree with that. I don't agree with that when you talk about what Aerodel does as a whole. And what I mean by that is like
okay. So in what way is Omen Bringer or Ember Root better than Frostback Bear?
I think it's cheaper across the entire game. Like if I start Bear,
Ember Root is okay. So that is a valid argument, and Ember Root might be better because it's 1 dice.
It's 2 dice to play the first one, so it's a factor of like in round 1 I pay 3 dice for 2 Ember Roots. That's what I pay. So I get 2.
You pay 3 and some amount of value dice, like because you're counting the Omen Bringer as untapping the book as like into this calculation. So you also have to count in the cost of the Omen Bringer, the cost of the actions to make the Omen Bringer, and the cost.
But the Omen Bringer is not a 0 card, right? It's not. Right, it's not 0. Yeah.
That's why I said it was a fraction of a dice more than 3, not an actual dice more than 3.
Yeah, I don't. I guess I look at it as. Like, when I did the math on, like, Frostback Bear, like, to make double Frostback Bear off of Omenbringer, which is very easy in this deck if you want to do it, but it's 5 dice, right? It's a huge chunk of your turn. And, you know, if your opponent's on any hard removal and or on crescendos or anything like that, like, you're not going to stick those double bears long-term anyways.
Right, and all the cards you just named kill Omenbringer and Emberroot the exact same.
Yeah, but they're worse trades. They're worse trades. All of them are. They're all worse trades.
No.
Yeah, for sure. A bear costs you more than an Ember Root or costs you more than an Omenbringer, always. So it's a worse trade. If they hit me with, they kill my bear, they get better dice efficiency.
Right. With their crescendo specifically, all their other cards, like the dice is better because they only have to do 2, right? Like because Ember Root and Omenbringer get water blasted, like, and Frostback does not, like that's where the value is made up. If I was going into a match against Aerodel, I would want 3 toughness guys, not 2 toughness guys. But like
I just don't think it makes any difference. I think it's exactly the same. The outcome will be exactly the same. I don't think it makes any difference. That's what I weighed all week when I was thinking about this. I mean, after I finished up AshCon last week, I turned my focus to this and I went, I don't think I gain anything by spending the extra dice on a bear. I gain a small margin of life that Aerodel can easily handle. That's where I was at on it. And I didn't think it was worth it. I thought it was more worth it for me to make smaller units that were more dice efficient, that I could do more actions than my opponent. Unfortunately, he's just on 4 book, right? Like, and I can't beat a 4 book with 3 book. It's just really, really difficult. That's why you saw me load up on Omen Bringers, right? Because I just needed to make more units, and so it was sort of a way for me to get to a 4th book, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think that if you're trying to beat the Aerodel on 4-book plan, not playing Aerodel or Lulu, you're gonna lose. Like, so you have to come up with your like own kind of plan.
Well, I mean that's what this was, right? This was my own plan of like bait out the water blast into the thing that I want him to shoot, right? And that's going to be the Omen Bringer, but I get to actually still make an Omen Bringer, so I'm trading 1 die in that exchange, because I know he's not going to shoot the Ember Root, right? But Turtle's a real problem. I have no way to kill a turtle in this deck. Like, I don't have Water Blast on board. If I had Water Blast on board, I'd feel great with Ember Root into Turtle or Bear or whatever, right? But I don't have ways to kill 3 life units. So 3 life units.
That's what I was saying is like your first argument was like he has 4 books, so I have to play an additional book to keep up on guys. Well, I think that if you're on a 3 spellboard Phoenixborn and you're trying to fight Aerodel just in number of book activations, you're never gonna win. Like,
well, I don't think Koji can beat it. That's what makes Koji bad.
Right, Koji is.
I don't care what
Koji is a builder. Is a builder on me, right? And like I said last week, like with the addition of Lulu, he looks really unfortunate. And the only thing he does is Guilt Link. Like, that's the only unique thing he does, because his Phoenixborn text is so similar to Spark that it makes him like bad. The other thing he does is have a huge spellboard.
Mm-hmm.
Or sorry, not spellboard, a huge battlefield, which is unique to him. But again, like, you come close enough to that with Aerodel,
right?
Like, it's really hard to make 10 guys, and the difference between 10 and 8 is like not that big a deal.
Right.
And honestly, the difference between 10 and 6 is not that big a deal unless you're on some kind of like wacky go wide commander type thing.
Well, and I was just like to a point where Aerodel puts so much pressure on me, no matter what, that I couldn't get my standard bearers out. Right, standard bearers start to change the combat math, but I just couldn't do it. Like, I just couldn't get there. I don't think creepers is a reason to consider Koji at all.
Yeah, you should just play Lulu if you're playing creepers.
Yeah, I think I think creepers are better in Lulu all day, and I think Guilt Link's better in Koji. But like, I couldn't play Guilt Link. I would have loved to play Guilt Link here.
Right, you were at a big Phoenixborn disadvantage. I do like the card Lick Wounds, but your deck was built to where Lick Wounds was like at its weakest, because you only had the Hammer Knight and the 3 standard bearers as units that you could actually like heal and untap. So so it was just like a game 2 for you.
Yeah.
And 2 dice game 2 is not very good.
It's Carl's gonna start going on his creeper.
Right. I mean,
rant
Carl
here,
Carl refuses to agree with me on anything, so I like sure.
I just think that end of the day, like, yes, I don't think Lick Wounds did all that much, but in the 2 games that I play tested, I was able to effectively survival, keep a standard bearer up, make more hoppers and little guys like Raptor Herders and things like that, swing for attack, and then untap the standard bearer in that scenario. But I mean, I was just pressured so hard in this matchup that I had to use Lick Wounds in a way that was less beneficial for me.
Right, you had to play your Lick Wounds when you played them to not die, which is fine. I mean, it's just like, all I was saying is that if you don't have the bear or the turtle or more knights, the Lick Wounds power level decreases a lot.
Sure.
Because the best thing it does is like shore up your guy that you get to use again. And, you know, it's possible that you would get like an Omen Bringer untap out of it, but it's just an untap, then you're like wasting the heal value. I guess it's possible an Omen Bringer would take 1 and then you'd heal it, but
yeah, I mean, it's obviously not great to untap an Ember Root with Lick Wounds, and it's not great probably to untap an Omen Bringer with Lick Wounds. It's okay.
Like, if you're the thing about it is that if you're untapping Omen Bringer with Lick Wounds, it's probably actually insane to do that. But if you're doing that, you're probably just winning by a million, because that means that you had a 2/2 in play, that you got that live long enough to get a status counter and attack, and then live again to where you could untap it and get another attack.
Yeah.
Right. Like, but once you do that, you're obviously in Value Village and crushing your opponent because you've made a bunch of lizards that turn.
Well, the one, I mean, again, so 2 test games. One was the Prism match I played with you last week, I think on AshCon with this list. I think that was Thursday or Friday.
One of the days, yeah.
And then the other one was just a random, I don't even remember who I played with this. And I was to a point where I was untapping Omen Bringers, and I was just winning easily and making a bunch of... well, they were on, you know what? They were on a Maoni. I remember now. And they were using Nature's Wrath to clear off my Time Hoppers. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just keep untapping Time Hopper.
And they didn't have a 2-power guy to command strike your bird?
No, I was able to take care of the Frostfang that they played with the bird and the Amberroot Lizard. Like, I was just using nature pings. In fact, I think on that first 5, I took a really conservative first 5 round. And you got to remember also, I can Fate Reflect Command Strike, which is pretty good.
Obviously, you have the Fate Reflection the same as against Water Blast, but
yeah, I haven't looked this evening, Inquisitor. Good question.
We were at 26 at like middle afternoon, I think was what you sent me.
Yeah. We're at 28 right now.
Yeah, that's good. I mean,
yeah,
the large majority of players wait until like the day before to sign up. So
I know.
maybe this has changed because of AshCon, so there's a lot of hype around it right now. But
right. I would suspect. I still think 40 is the number we'll probably get to. We had 38.
Okay, so we're just shooting for like 40 to beat.
I predict 40. That's what I predicted. But
I don't think that it'll be many more. But how many new ones do we have among the?
Quite a few. We've got Waterbender, Zizzaros, Apple Sith. I don't think has ever played in a Shufflebus before. If you have Apple, I'm sorry. I just didn't remember. DG Denver is new.
Who's that Cam guy? I don't think I've ever heard of him.
Man, that guy. He just brings a curse every time. So, but let's pivot over to our season 4 recap. Neil,
real quick, I just want to take a look here at the AshCon results because they were posted today.
Sure.
How many of these pod winners were not like previous Shufflebus players? Because we had like over half.
There's a lot.
Like maybe that's like humble brags or like not very humble brags, but Asterix Red King, B Perosis, Christian, Niall, Brian B, BD Wayne, Clue,
the Cap, Clue,
the Cap,
yeah,
German,
me,
I guess you, Schmedrix, Kaya,
Killer,
Cactus, Philly.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Like 75%. So you guys, not only did you support Plaid Hat, which we greatly appreciate being part of that AshCon, but you also like just showed how competitive our community is for Shufflebus. Because, right. And I mean, I hope that it doesn't come off as like a bunch of competitive people just beating on casuals, but I just thought that was cool that we had so many active members of our community do well in the.
Yeah, it's just kind of like it's like when we set out to build a competitive environment for Ashes, right? Like we wanted to be that, and I think we're doing that very well. And I'm sure that there's room for improvement, always, of course. I mean, we're always iterating and trying to do that, but the fact that a large percentage of Shufflebus competitors won their pods says a lot about how Shufflebus prepares people to play competitive Ashes, even in closed deck formats, where you don't know what your opponent's going to do, right? But you've seen enough Ashes now, and you've played enough Ashes at a high level that you go, oh, well, I know how to respond to this kind of thing. And some things are going to be gotchas, for sure.
And so much of Ashes is building a deck and like building a first 5.
Absolutely.
And, even though we do it different in Shufflebus where you have perfect information, it's still just I don't know. I was just proud of all you guys. I don't know if you care about that, but
I care about it. I even made the comment in the AshCon Discord about it today because I'm proud of it. It's kind of like it was a proud moment for me, for sure. But yeah, I mean, let's pivot over to this Shufflebus 4 recap. We're gonna have to do or at least have Nick on Thursday to talk
Nick
about
is going to be on at the top of the show on Thursday, and
Yep.
we have a couple talking points.
Yep. But and specifically related to Shufflebus 4. And then Shufflebus champions are a bunch of scrubs because you guys went 2-1. Hey, Warrior, like I kind of set myself up, right? Like I don't know, German will probably have quick access to this. I think he like pins these things and then goes back to them later. But when they were talking about the pod construction, I said I kind of hope I end up in the pod with Matt and Carl, just because I wanted to play those guys, right? Like I loved playing Matt tonight.
He says that now after he won his pod.
Well, I didn't know I was going to win at all. Like, at all. I mean, I think my personal opinion, the only reason I won is because Matt brought Saria. If Matt doesn't bring Saria, I lose. Personally. That's, But he brought Saria. So I was able to beat Saria. Like, I think that's the only reason why. I'm not taking anything away from, anybody. But, like, I want to play those guys because they help me get better. Like this game against Matt helped me get better today, right? Like it helps me see different lines of play and to do things differently and to think about it. And my happy point is when I play a guy like Matt or Carl and I don't get blown out, right? Because when I first started Ashes and I played those guys, I got blown out a lot. Like they were non-games. So for me, like, just putting up a decent fight in those games tells me that I've progressed as a player, right? So when we talk about competitive play, and I have a growth mindset, I think we've talked about this on the pod, but my growth mindset is oriented around not the outcome of an individual game or the outcome of an individual tournament, but whether or not I got better as a player and as a student of this game in that process. If I didn't, then I got to reevaluate what am I thinking about or what am I working on as a player? And not everybody has to have that, but that's the way I am, right? I think it's a good way to go about learning Ashes and being a better Ashes player. But, that's the way I look at it. I think I still have plenty to learn about the game of Ashes. Plenty. And I know that we make a lot of hot takes and certain people don't always agree with our hot takes. And that's fine. I
don't agree with like 50% of what you say.
Oh, that's fair. But I'm fine with somebody saying the Shufflebus guys are wrong, and I'll prove it. Cool, go do it, right? But we had this conversation a little bit, and maybe we can table the Shufflebus 4 stuff till Thursday or something, but because this might go on for a little while. But
I kind of want to table it until Nick is here, just to have Nick in on it. Because
sure, okay, I'm down with that.
Since he obviously played the top 4 or whatever, and he just always has such great input on.
I'm down with that. I think that we can look at players like Carl and Matt and Brian B and Inquisitor and Bill and Red King and those are top tier players in this community, and they've been playing Ashes for an extreme amount of time, so you can learn a lot from your games when you play them. But these guys can bring just about any deck and pilot it to a very high level, right? And bring just about anything to the table and have a winning record and push themselves up. And when we go back to Shufflebus 4 and you go back and you watch our preview for Shufflebus 4, our deck preview stuff, and we're talking about Matt and his single Lightbringer, I think, Neil, you made the comment, Matt just likes to create challenges for himself and puzzle his way out of it. I think that was the term you used for that.
I was trying not to tell him that his deck was bad.
Yeah.
But it didn't seem very good.
But it didn't matter, right? Like Matt still ranked extremely high in Shufflebus rankings. I mean, when you look at the bracket.
Sure, yeah. And that was a statement we made when we were doing the preview also, that he does it to challenge himself, even if it's kind of a pile. He'll probably do okay.
And Matt finished 12th, right? He's in the top 25%, which is what you would expect. He went 3-3 with that deck. So
I have to admit that I think that just like talk like this is actually bad for the community.
Really?
Where we're just like this person is going to win regardless of what they play.
I
think that's a big compliment to Matt, but it's I think that our last season was our most competitive season, and you
For
see
sure.
it that way because we're seeing like the deck archetypes kind of coalesce, where a lot of the things in the top 8 had a lot of similar things. I mean, obviously they weren't like all the same, but we had 3 heralds in the top 4, and they weren't the same deck, but they all kind of functioned in a similar place.
Yeah, I think they're pretty close.
2 Jessas that were both the aggressive Jessas,
Mhm.
and a lot of other card overlap. And so it's stuff like that where the rest of the community is like catching on to what's good, and it's going to become harder to just pilot your way to the top on anything.
Sure.
And well, I don't want to take anything away from Matt Bowers because he's obviously a great player, and that deck was cool.
Yeah.
If not wacky. And
Right.
obviously he got 12, right? Like I would have got 12 with that pile. But I think it's a much healthier kind of thinking to just be like, you know, I know all these guys are great. You should reach out to them at any time you have any questions,
Mhm.
because they're all super friendly too, and they always have good advice, even if Carl never agrees with me. But he was right. He said we agreed today because he gave his little list of hot takes, and I agreed with him that I think Fire Archer is a trap. It's not very good.
I mean, I think Carl and I are both a little bit high on Omenbringer right now, and we're both a little down on Frostback Bear right now. And I think that's just a product of playing into a lot of stuff right now that fights those things. I mean, we've seen cards specifically released to sort of be counters to Frostback Bear. And so
I'm just confused how Omenbringer is better against anything than Frostback Bear. Like, it's just smaller. Like I
think you're under evaluating the value of bottoming cards in the deck.
I definitely am, because I think that that ability is 0.1 cards. Like it's like 10% better or less than if it was blank.
And I think you just need to play with it a little bit then, because I think you'll see.
I played with it a bunch when it first came out. Like and the untap ability was cute and cool, but the come into play ability like is whatever. Like in Magic cards or any other card game, it would be absolutely bonkers because you only draw 1 card a turn. But when you draw 5 cards at a time, like you're stacking 20% of their draw, and unless you leave one on top, you're not actively changing anything.
Well, and that's, I mean, that's a skill decision, right? Like you have to decide, like, is of these 2 cards, is one of these need to stay on the top? Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point, Inquisitor, about the book tax for sure.
If they were both allies and one costs 2 and one costs 3, I would 100% agree with you. And if we move to a meta where every game is 2 rounds long, then I will switch what I'm saying, because then you're talking about 5 dice versus 4 dice. But I think as long as you get 3 activations out of it, the bear is better.
Well, okay, so 7 dice versus 6, it's still the same. You're still 1 dice up throughout the whole game, even in 3 rounds.
Well,
8 dice versus 7.
You're not taking into account the better trades you get with a 2/3 than you do with a 2/2.
I just don't. I think you think there's a lot of those, but there's not.
Well, I mean, you were saying Water Blast, and 1 dice and a Water Blast kills an Omenbringer, and 1 dice and Water Blast plus something else kills a Frostback Bear. So there's value gained there. Like,
and in certain matchups that you may be right, but that's going to be a matchup dependency thing only. It's not going to be like when you just start talking about unit trades. I just don't. I mean, unless the world turns into a bunch of 2/1s. Right, like if the meta goes to a bunch of 2/1s, then I agree the bear looks pretty darn good again.
Why is the bear better against 2/1s?
Because it's for the exact reason you don't combat trade. They're 2/1 dies.
You don't combat trade with 2/2s in the same way as 2/1s. It has 2 power.
No. I'm saying the bear lives through 2/1s. You see, like I think
right, and it lives through 2/2s.
Right, but the 2/2. The 2/2 dies to 2/1s. So if the 2/1s become better, I think the 2/2s are worse against 2/1s because the 2/1s are cheaper and more efficient at killing the 2/2s.
I agree 100%.
Okay. But the 2/1s can't beat the 2/3, right? So the extra cost of the bear is worth it at that point.
So you're just saying if there's more instances of 2 damage in the meta.
Correct.
Then Frostback Bear is better.
Correct.
Well, how many instances of 3 damage are there?
Just the knights.
And Crescendo. and molten gold.
Sure, okay. Yeah, if you're talking
So-
about hard removal, but I mean, then you're talking about sources of 2 damage is way up there too when you start talking about
Right, but
seeds
that's
of aggression and shared sorrow.
right.
And
So
whatever.
that's where I'm saying that value is gained, because there's X number of things that kill an Omenbringer that don't kill a Prospect Bringer, right? I mean, and the list is long, and I don't know what's actually played right now, but like,
why the 1x Inquisitor? I don't think the bear cares about the 1x at all. Like an 0-2 that turns into a 1x or 1-2 or whatever. I don't think the bear cares about that at all. If you're racing better than they are.
I think the main way bear starts looking sad is if we have more 2-2 and 1x in the meta. I mean, I think that bear is good against both of those things because it kills them without trading.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's bear is better, no doubt. That's what Carl says.
Yeah.
Being down on bear and being up on Overbringer doesn't mean you think that it's better than bear. Okay. I see what you're saying, Carl. It's not that Omenbringer is better than bear. That was what I thought the argument was. But if you're just saying bear is overrated or correctly rated and Omenbringer is underrated, I could believe that argument.
Yeah, I think Omenbringer is a very good card. I think Winged Lioness is a very good card, and I think you can create a lot of favorable math situations with those cards and bear.
It's really funny to me that they printed is it Inflame?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the +1 for 1 that gives it like cast
must be blocked, yeah.
So like they printed this like pretty useful little alteration, and you'd think it would be good on Lioness. It's probably okay.
Yeah.
But like it's actually, I think that actually made all the 2-power conjurations like a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not actually better than Lioness, but like close the gap to Lioness.
Right.
Because they give you like the removal kind of ability that Lioness has ish.
Mm-hmm.
And it like essentially gains Lioness nothing other than a power.
Yeah, I think actually to me,
one of the played very much. I think that card's really good.
I've been trying to find a spot for it, but I've had a hard time. I've had a hard time plugging it in. I've tried it in like Hammer Knight, right, with Hammer Knight to like force a Hammer Knight to get blocked and get the overkill off. You can obviously do it with Sonic and get Sonic Pulse off, those kinds of things.
I think you're thinking too big. I think
no.
Having a Frostback Bear or an Omen
right,
Bear,
but I've done it on Frostback Bear as well. But the problem with the Frostback Bear is there's still plenty of things in the meta that can't block the bear, so you just bypass for 3. It's like kind of the same as putting a Divine Die on the bear at that turn. I mean, it's so it doesn't necessarily do anything other than protect the bear from survival if you're worried about survival of the fittest. That's a value play for that 1 die. And when you talk about like doing 1 damage, the nature die that's attached to Inflame is 1 damage. So it's kind of the same, right? Kind of.
Except that so the way it's the same is so let's use Omenbringer as example, because that's what we've been talking about as a 2-2. So sure. I'm an Omenbringer and you have Frostback Bear, and I'm trying to kill your Frostback Bear. Me having a nature dice doesn't do that.
Sure.
So you have PB guard.
I agree.
Inflame does do that. So it's like
only if that's the only unit in play.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. I'm setting this up, right? Like, because having other units in play doesn't make your nature die kill that Frostback Bear any better either.
Sure.
It may give you another target for nature dice, in which case, if we're talking about the situation where you have an Inflame, then you have to make a play decision of whether killing another guy and leaving their Frostback Bear up is important.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, like it does a damage if your guys were going to have combat already.
Sure.
But because it forces combat, it's like does somewhere between 1 and 3 damage based on games that played.
So I think some of the best places for it is on the 2-1s, because you make them into 3-1s, and they have to be blocked, and that's a scenario. That's a scenario you engineer where you trade 2 dice. Essentially, it's 2 dice to trade into something, and if it doesn't kill, or they choose not to counter, I guess they have to block, so there's no not counter.
Unless you attack the unit directly.
Sure, but then at that point you don't need the Inflame. At that point, you might as well play hunting weapons and get something. Well,
you can't play hunting weapons on any conjurations. That's the difference.
No, you have to put them on an ally.
Otherwise,
there are some 2-1 allies. I mean, I think Psychic Vampire with hunting weapons is probably pretty good because your opponent doesn't want to kill it.
I think Psychic Vampire with Inflame is actually better because, to your point, they're forced to block it and
Right.
therefore counter.
Right. I think that's where I'm landing on a lot of these things.
Yeah, the downside to the 2/1s is that you are trading 2 cards for 1, and if you put it on like a Frostback Bear or whatever in it, and like you kill their Frostback Bear and your Frostback Bear doesn't die, like then you have the potential to keep it around, right? If you put it on a
small
beefier unit, anytime you at least like make them think about you getting an extra card out of it.
See, I kind of think of it like a poor man's strengthen in the way the games actually play.
Well, again, like I don't think you can compare it to pump spells that don't force combat.
Sure.
Because that's the part of it that's powerful. Like if the card didn't get, like if it just said like give no stats and give has to be blocked, it would still be interesting, though not good probably. More interesting than like just one that gives +2 power.
I mean, it's a big expense, but Ceratosaurus Mount's probably a pretty decent one because of the overkill ability, still doing some PB damage on top of it and being able to take a knight. But it's a huge expense.
Fine. Like, because to your point, it reaches the breaking point of the 4 life units.
Right.
And it because it has 3 life, you have the potential to keep your Inflame around for the next round, though
right.
Obviously unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I've been. I mean, I've tried it in a few decks, right? But I've not been very impressed with it. It's hard to engine. It's hard to it's like Law of Domination, right? It looks really good on paper, but it's hard to manufacture a game state where it's actually good.
Law of Domination has Recollect now.
Well, sure.
I don't know if that's good enough, but kind of cute. All those laws got. I think all the laws got a significant buff from Recollect, but not all of them are still playable. Like obviously, they're all great when they're good. Like there's no like middle ground where they're like just okay. If you get somebody with them, they're absolutely insane because they're like a sideboard card. But
so I've been playing a little bit of this, and it has been working fairly well unless somebody swarms you. And this is do you feel safe first 5-ing it? I don't know, Warrior, on that part. I don't know if, I mean, not every card has to be a first 5 card to be good, though. I do want to say that.
It depends on the matchup. Like, Inflame is definitely a card that you could just slap 3 in your deck and probably be okay with as long as you have a lot of units. Because you're not, it would be rare that in the 2 through X rounds of the game that you would be upset drawing it. Can you first 5 it? I mean, sure. In open deckless tournament, I would be scared to first 5 it if I saw any kind of thing that killed my guy. But in general, can you first 5? Like if you have Frostback Bear, you first 5 Frostback Bear Inflame against a deck that's like in a closed deck tournament, you're playing against Auric, and he's on something like Nature, Divine, Time, I guess, because you think of all the things that can kill your guy before you do it, and because it's a side action, it's pretty safe. Because if you're playing Frostback Bear, you're going to make a Frostback Bear, right? Like you're going to make a Frostback Bear, you're going to pass the turn. That's just, well, not literally take the pass action, but like you make a Frostback Bear and let your opponent have a turn. And maybe they'll kill it. But then you have a whole turn to yourself where, unless they have, I'm trying to think of a reaction they could have that would get you if you just went Inflame attack. Figures in the Fog. Stasis. That'd be a pretty good stasis.
Yeah, stasis is really interesting.
Because then because they wouldn't have to block it then because they'd get removed from attacking.
The Figures in the Fog is also not terrible if you're in an illusion. So I don't
particularly like either of those cards, but I'm just trying to think of things that actually get you when you do the like side action Inflame then attack.
So I we'd had a conversation offline this week about you're working on something different, but you told me if I wanted to make a bunch of 2-1s, like go build the deck and try it, and I have been playing it this week. The deck is 1-3 in this iteration, but its one win was against the Mayoni Snake deck, which I thought would be a really tough matchup for it with Ice Traps and Nature's Wraths. But
I mean,
you know,
I think you should just like cut all your non-Shadow Guard allies and put in some stuff. Because
what do you mean put in some stuff?
I don't know, anything. Like the thing about these 4-book decks is that they don't need very many allies.
Sure.
Because they're just making books every turn. And you have the concentrations. So if you're set up with 4 books,
the concentration is not a actual plan, right? We're not trying to stall the game to awaken state here. We're trying to be an aggressive deck. I mean,
you shouldn't play the concentration at all, right? Like,
well, so the problem is, and this is, I tried it with Magic Siphon first over concentration.
Magic Siphon also a card that's not very aggressive.
Right, but the reason why is because you have so many power side requirements between the Ancestor Spirits and the Shadow Spirits. There's so much power side needed, and then if you're trying to get Meteor set up, there's power sides needed. So like you need so many power sides that concentration gives you the power sides and gives you an extra card because everything is so cost efficient in this deck that you just run out of cards. Like I have ended rounds with 4 dice because I didn't have enough dice to spend. You know what I'm saying? Like it's happened in my losses in particular.
I also think that the Meteor is probably not very good for you.
Well, I started this deck with no Meteors and lost to everything because if the opponent gets you on board, you can't get back. You can't get back.
Well, yeah, like, you want to get to the point where you're activating like maybe 5 or 6 books a turn, I think.
Well, and I've been there. You still can't get back because everything's with 1 life. Like Nature's Wrath wrecks your day. Nature Ping wrecks your day.
If that's the case, then I think that the concept is flawed, not necessarily.
Well, I agree, but I was interested about it because we've been talking a lot about how Nature's Wrath may kind of come down a little bit with all these O2s, and it only serves if the O2s actually see enough play that people start to think Nature's Wrath's not good enough to put 3x Nature's Wrath in their decks. But I think because of risks of Fallen and risks of James and stuff like that, nobody's going to leave Nature's Wrath at home if they're playing Nature.
Sure.
Right?
Nature's Wrath is a very good card, obviously.
So you really end up in these really bad situations where you cannot just like summon book, attack, or like summon book, attack next round. Like you just don't stick units. I mean, it just doesn't happen. So then you get behind on board. And now if you can flip the board, which is what I've done with this deck in almost all the games that I have either won or come close to winning, it's because I flipped the board. I was able to take away all of their tempo, and all of my tempo is much cheaper. So, like, you go, okay, I'm going to Meteor you, and then, yeah, you're going to spend, 7 dice to set your board back up, but I'm going to spend 7 dice, and I'm going to have 4 times the units. You know what I mean? And that's why you need the allies, because you can't have enough books to do that. Like, I could go to 3x books of the Shadow Spirit, the Ancestor Spirit, and the Lioness if I wanted to, but, like, it doesn't actually get you anywhere over... having some allies, and hollows are reasonably good to stop, because one of the things that can really get you in trouble with this deck is if your opponent's on any sort of reaction, protection like Golden Veil. And so, because I want to use these 2-1s and then clear them with Seeds of Aggression, right, to make more room once I'm full. So it's kind of like using Seeds like Jessa, right? Like once you're up on battlefield, you can start using Seeds as a battlefield clear for more damage than Jessa does to units, not to Phoenixborns. Obviously, that's a big difference, but it allows you to start continuing to make more Shadow Spirits, Ancestor Spirits. And Concentration lets you do that by giving you the dice colors back you need sometimes, because it allows you to stretch your dice a little bit. Like, I don't have to run 4 illusion dice to be able to play a Shadow Guard, right? I can run 3 pretty easily. And
I like the card Concentration. I just like looking at this list, it's difficult for me to like see how the turns go good for you. I mean, you're right. If you start behind in a round and you like play a Meteor, like you like kind of like have a 2-2-1s in play, or a Linus and a 2-1 or whatever, and they start like a couple guys up on you and they make a bear, and then you cast Meteor, like that's a pretty big swing in your favor.
Mm-hmm.
but that
That
like
happens a
requires
lot.
you to be behind to start,
You
and that's
you
not like
are
a plan that I want to be on necessarily.
sure, yeah, but I don't think that you can actually be ahead on 2/1s with so many instances of 1 damage in the game. I mean, every color has some instance of 1 damage, whether and that's in the form of Anchornaut, which gets played a lot. You know, it's in the form of Enchanted Violinist. It's in the form of a cheap River Scald.
I
You know,
don't
there's
disagree with you. I mean, this is why we've always said that the like non salamander monk
right,
one guys
but
are bad.
but I thought it was an interesting concept to test because if Nature's Wrath was losing some steam in the game, you know, it's possible that you could stick some of these bigger boards.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that we're going to see a lot of Gilders, which
Yeah.
is likely too.
I mean, I played through Gilder. Like, you can play through Gilder pretty easily. It's kind of surprising because you can force the Lightbringer is pretty good at forcing attacks and making things a little bit less interesting.
Well, it like always 2-for-1s you, right? Like it always kills one of your guys and leaves a body.
Well, but I mean, I look at Ancestor Spirit into Gilder and I just say this is the same as taking a Sympathy dice to draw a card. So I force them to make the Gilder, which just means that I have now the ability to react to the Gilder in play with other 2/1s that kill the Gilder very efficiently. So
yeah,
I mean,
that's
I play
still 2-for-1 to you because it still killed a guy and it left a body behind. Like,
and again, like I said, I beat a Mayoni Snake deck through this whole process. You know, like it was a
sure,
it was a.
I mean,
So I think it's the kind of thing that, like, yes, you're right. Gilder can kill a unit you play for sure. No different than somebody using a nature die to kill a unit you play.
well, it's very different because it leaves a body behind. Like it 2-for-1s you. Nature dice is a 1-for-1.
It leaves an O2 that can't do anything to you after that. It just can't. I mean, I guess I can amplify it, but
do you attack it?
For sure. I mean, you attack the
then
PB.
it did something. Like
You attack the PB
used,
and it forces PB guard. I mean, that's you have to get around it at some point.
right. So it does something. It doesn't.
Sure.
You said it did nothing to you. It did do something to you. Like
Yeah,
whether or not that's the value of a full dice is, I don't know. But in general, it's like.
So,
that's
anyways,
what makes the Gilder so much better than just regular pink. Like so much better than Frostbite or.
I mean, Shadowguard is an MVP at stopping things like Frostback Bears. And
yeah, that card's really good. It just requires you to pay double illusion, which is kind of rough.
But you don't actually pay double illusion with Concentrate because you can move one of those Sympathy die back.
I don't mean
to
in your
illusion.
deck specifically.
Yeah.
I just mean in general for the game. You have to be playing.
I'm just saying you don't. Yeah, I mean, the Gilders are paying for 2/1s for sure. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I'm just saying, like, it's not as big of an impact.
This. Carl agreed with me.
It's just not as big of an impact as we sit back and say it is. It just isn't. The bigger, more challenging problem for this deck is, like, somebody plays a 3/4, right? And what do? Like, it's really hard to kill 3/4s. Any 3/4. I don't care which one it is.
Yeah, I think on a deck like this, you like have to be playing Fester, unfortunately.
Well, and even that's not good enough because where are you going to get your source of 1 damage from? Like, you're going to have to go Nature Fester, and then you're out of the colors that you want to be in for these 2/1s because there is no 2/1s in those colors, right? Like,
I mean, Crescendo's pretty close, I guess.
It's not enough. I promise you. I mean, one of the decks I got blown out.
Arguing that your deck is bad, and I'm
no. I just one of the decks I got blown out by. I'm just telling you, like in the 4 test games I played, one of the decks that I did get blown out by was a deck that played Double Night Start. You just can't answer it before it just wrecks your face.
Right. That sounds awful for this deck.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
the idea behind this deck would be going into a meta where Double Night Start is less common because they printed Backtrack.
But I think even with Backtrack printed, I don't think that's going to keep people from playing Double Night Starts.
Yeah. So again, you're just making arguments against your deck here.
No. I know, but it was because we were having this conversation, and I wanted to bring our viewers into this as well because there's some community conversation about 2/1s as well, and obviously 4 games is a small sample size, but fadeaways with Polarity Mage, sure, yeah. I mean, but they're going to still get value out of that 3/4 before it dies.
The issue is with fadeaway and those other things is the Double Night Start specifically, because if they just start 1 night and you can use your PB block on it, then the fadeaway or the two shadows or the captivate are good.
Mm-hmm.
But if they have double knight, then, you know, if you have those kind of rule spells, we know that it gets to attack first. So the second one is going to get to like 2-for-1 you, whether it's swordsman or hammer knight or whatever, because it's going to get its like knight ability off in combat, because your guys are definitely dying to it.
So Carl, I agree that yes, Aura can play first 5 backtrack. I'm not yeah, it's the issue is to go into time. What are you doing? What are you doing with a 5 battlefield in time? Right? I mean, Oryx doesn't have a huge battlefield, so like
right, and that's another thing about this deck specifically is like he has 5 battlefield.
Right. I mean, like I was interested in it as because I've talked a lot about you know, Odette and 5 battlefield, and every one of those units that you put in Odette's battlefield has to be meaningful, and she has the single best untap in the game, right? And well, maybe not the single best untap, but one of the better untaps in the game, also because it can double as a removal when you need it. But when you talk about this kind of deck where you have less meaningful units, and then you're going to expend those units to remove things on your opponent's board through seeds and shadows and meteor, and you know, you're going to open up the battlefield again to make more stuff, you kind of have to go all in on these dice colors in order to be able to make more ancestor spirits and more shadow spirits and another lightbringer and a winged lioness, right? Like I almost put Gates in this list. Like I tried.
Gates is like, so when we talked about this list before, the closest thing that I could think of was like Matt's season 2 winning deck, where it didn't literally have 4 book, but it like did a lot with its spell board to pressure the battlefield, because it just had like a million shadow spirit books, and it played Gates, and that was one of like its big wins, you know.
Yeah, but I'm not disagreeing with you, Carl. I think the experiment was enough of a data set to know, yes, it can win games, but it wins games on the back of Meteor, which other decks win on the back of Meteor, so why bother? But, like, what are we actually gaining by slotting 2 1s in at that point? I mean, honestly, like, what are we gaining?
Well, it's like, against the decks that are playing Lizard or Snake instead of like Salamander Monk or Butterfly Monk, the 2 1s are better.
Sure, I'm not going to disagree with that.
Your normal that, I mean, but that's what you're gaining, is these 2 1s are good, assuming that we're calling the meta correctly, where it's going to be a bunch of 2 life units going into season 5.
Well, I just envision a play pattern where if my opponent's sitting on an Ember Root Lizard or a Ruby Cobra, or take your pick of O2s that actually do something aggressive, and I'm sitting on a Shadow Spirit on the other side, or an Ancestor Spirit, I don't care which one it is. Like, I mean, one gives you a card, which I think the Ancestor Spirit's better than the Shadow Spirit by 5%.
Yeah, it depends on the matchup, yeah, but they're pretty similar.
Then, you know, we're just going to stare at each other down, right? Because nobody can make the Ember Root. Like, if he makes the Ember Root, I can't make a 2-1. Right? Because the second he makes an Ember Root, you know the next thing's going to be is a side action, make a status token, ping off your 2-1. Right? And still get in for 1. So the Ember Root wins that exchange, always. So, unless it's a Cobra...
Well, it depends on... it. There's more to it than that. You're right. If those are the first actions of the round, then yes. But a deck like this needs to pressure the PB guard early, so that your 2 1s become removal spells rather than...
If you can do that, and that's a big if, then I agree with you. But 2 1s don't...
I'm not telling you that a deck does. I'm telling you that if you want this deck to be good, that's what you have to do. I don't know how you do it, but...
Yeah, I mean, that's what I have come up with. I mean, the best way to pressure Phoenix Guard... The best way I have pressured the Phoenix-born guard in this deck is Light Swordsman. Because it comes from hand, they don't see it coming. And you get to attack with it immediately.
When we first started like playing Reborn, that was like one of my favorite cards, Light Swordsman.
I still think it's really good for a single die investment.
It's pretty cool.
But again, that's a big if, right? Like it's like so you're basically saying, of all the 2 1s I'm playing, Light Swordsman is... I first off, I wouldn't even want to play this against Cole. If I saw Cole on the other side, I'd just say, good game, shake my opponent's hand, and walk away. Because there's just no way you're beating a Cole at all. But the interesting thing about it is you really don't have good other choices, right? Like when you take Ancestor Spirit, I mean, yeah, you can put a Salamander Monk alongside it. Sure, that's fine. But I mean, you're gonna play Stallions then because like you're in Sympathy.
I
Right?
actually think Stallions are going to be good going into this format, specifically because they can't die to Fate Reflection.
That's an interesting point.
You can like,
and two Torrents makes you a bear. It doesn't have bypass, but it makes you a bear.
Well, I just think in general, like the Stallions got better because there's more care about status counter things, and
Sure.
because Fate Reflection is so prevalent. So
Status,
you can like if you attack with just a Stallion, you can crescendo, and you know it's safe because they can't Fate Reflection you unless you have something else in play.
Yeah. Well, they can Fate Reflection other things, not the Stallion.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So like you can, if you just have Stallion in play, you can attack and crescendo, and you know you're safe from Reflection.
That's I mean, again, another engineered state where that's very unlikely in most game states, right? Like it just doesn't happen that often, man. Like, but so again, I was using concentration purely from a perspective, and you could go to 1x concentration in this, but I will tell you that the second concentration is kind of nice when you're trying to get certain dice back late in the round that you need. So, you know, take your pick, but I don't know what the shell needs to be, right? Like maybe it's possible that one of the best shells for this is to play like the Emperor Lion just to make a reasonable threat for 3 dice because everything else is so cheap.
Well, I mean, are you gonna like add 6 cards to your deck?
No, I know, but I'm just saying because it's in color and it's a 3/3 in color.
Oh, like if you're just making a 3/3 for 3, that's god awful.
Well, there's nothing else, right? Like that's the issue.
Right. I mean, like, I don't think that you can play it in these colors.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think you can. It's your guys are too low power.
Sure. I just think it at that point again going back to why slot the 2/1s at all. That's where I landed after
playing. I told you why. Like if we were talking about my 4-book Aerodale deck, right, that I played in season 2 and updated for season 3, but decided not to play.
First off, Law of Fear is just insane in this new world waves. I think Law of Fear was slept on through 4 seasons of Shufflebus.
It was a lot less good before they printed Lizard and Snake.
Sure, but I think it was very good still before that. I think there's going to be a lot of
copy in any deck besides Stefanos's.
No,
in any season.
No, but I think that's just a mistake.
I think that it's probably not good prior to this meta. Like somebody would have played it somewhere.
I don't know. I mean, there might be a deck in the field somewhere that did. I just, you know, I don't remember the 100 decks that we've looked at or the 60 decks we've looked at this point.
Yeah, in general, like the way that I would slot in a 2/1 is like take my Aerodale deck as an example. You can change out the Butterfly Monk for a 2/1 going into the meta where we're talking about many more 2 health units rather than 1 health units.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I think you would slot it in. I don't think you'd go all 2/1s, but just having like 1 2/1 among your 4 books, still having a Frostback Bear because it's so good, like whatever, as your like core threat, but having a 2/1 that, you know, in the 4-book in the 4-book matchup is what I was trying to say. The PB guard gets pressured pretty early because there's a lot of battlefield combat. You're always like 2 or 3 wide, and then you know you have the option to late round make an Ancestor Spirit or whatever and attack their tapped Lizard.
So but let's take your 4-book Aerodale as an example then, because we're talking about 4-book Aerodale here. The 4 books generally in that the best 4-book Aerodale we have seen, and waves no disrespect because I think your Stallion 4-book was really cool, but that was Phillies, right? That went undefeated in Swiss in season 2 or 3, and that had Frostback Bear, Mindfog Owl, Gilder, and what was the 4th book? I'm trying to remember now.
Salamander Monk.
Was it Salamander? I don't think it was. I don't think it was Salamander.
Carl says it's Salamander.
Was Sally? Yep, it was. You're right. Now, in this scenario, which one of these would you pull out for a 2-1? Honestly.
Salamander Monk.
No, I think yeah, but okay, so you take the Salamander Monk out. You spend 1 die to make a 2-1. It costs you a power die versus a class die. And your opponent has all the answers to kill it. Because, I mean, everybody's running nature, right? So just a single ping from any source.
I'm not telling you that it's better than what we're looking at. You asked when you would do it. This is when. If I knew that I was going into a meta where I needed a 2-power guy, that is the switch that I would make, because these are the kind of decks that you would handle.
But you've already got a 2-power guy in the Mindfog Owl. Why need another one?
Because there's more O2s. Like, because your Salamander Monk becomes so much worse. And to Carl's point here, this is like you just play both books, one Sally, one Ancestor, and switch it up based upon what you see.
Yeah, I mean, but obviously that's a. I mean, obviously in open deck format you know for sure, but in a closed deck you're going to guess there.
Right.
Whether they're playing O2s.
Any other guess. Like,
sure.
For those decks that have more than their spell board's worth of books.
I feel like setting up a 2-1 Ancestor Spirit over the Salamander Monk is probably somewhere in the 5 to 10% less powerful than just having the Salamander Monk and playing Salamander Monk. Except
when it has a good attacking target, like a Cobra or a Lizard, then it's better, right? Like, that's the decision you make.
But you have the Mindfog to do that already. Do you see what I'm saying? Like you already have the card to do that, and Bear and Mindfog.
So both. Take every other card out of the equation.
Sure.
If you're going to a meta of Cobras and Lizards, would you rather have a Sally or a Ancestor Spirit?
Still think I'd rather have a Sally.
Okay, well, I disagree.
Okay.
Because Salamander, doesn't trade with either of them profitably on attacks or defense, and the 2-1 does.
Where I look at it as, I already have plenty of ways to deal with 2 health.
But I told you, take every other card out of the equation.
No, I know, but I'm saying this has to be the best scenario. Like, you're trying to engineer the best scenario for playing a 2-1.
Well,
and I'm saying,
you asked me.
Yeah.
You asked me when you would do it, and I'm telling you, this is when you would do it. If you decide not to make that choice yourself, that's fine. But if you want me to answer the question of when you would do it, this is when you would do it. Are you supposed to do it? That question is so open-ended based on 27 other cards in your deck, 29 other cards in your deck, that you'd never be able to answer it. But if you want to know, like you asked me when you would do it, I told this is the best place that I can think of.
I guess we'll have to just see how it all shakes out. End of the day.
Do I think a lot of people are going to do this? No.
I think it's happening a lot more than you think, because I've seen them a lot.
That are putting in the 2-1s. You mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, maybe you're ahead of the meta, and you should just.
No. I've played a bunch of games online, right, with random people, right, and you see mostly it's Shadow Spirit. Most people are trying to play these spin down decks with Shadow Spirit, and they just don't do anything. I actually just actively go, oh, I'm happy you spent a die on that. Thank you.
You had to do something to it, right?
Sure.
It wasn't like a die for 0. It was a die for
sure. They walk into my Butterfly Monk and heal me. Okay, cool. Yeah, you roll down a die, but I don't care.
So that's from their point of view in that particular exchange, they're I don't know, 30% worse than having a Salamander Monk, maybe 40%. But in a matchup where they're playing against a Ruby Cobra, they're 40% better. Maybe just make that trade-off. It's just the same as any other deck building decision going into any other meta.
Sure. I mean, I guess where I'm going with it is, outside of Emberroot Lizard, I'm not that impressed with Cobra. I think Cobra's cool. And I think it does cool things.
I share that with you, that Emberroot Lizard is really, really good.
Yeah, Emberroot Lizard is
Cobra
the nuts.
Okay.
Yeah. That's where I'm at. I think that's where all of this stems from. It comes from the assumption that these O2s are going to be impactful on the meta, and one will be, I think. The others will be, I mean, maybe Cobra's in a tier 1.5, right? Like it'll be in a deck that wins or gets top 8. I think it's possible that it is there, but it's, I mean,
right. So the Cobra is just icing on the cake, right? If
Mhm.
if Emberroot Lizard is, quote Jesse Bergman, the nuts going into this new meta, then having Ancestor Spirit as an alternative to Salamander Monk in your 4-book deck is maybe something you should consider, just for the Lizard.
I just don't think you can favorably trade with the Lizard. I don't think there's a situation you can engineer where you actually get to play into the Lizard. You get to play into after their Lizard's been used, but their Lizard's got value at that point. They already got their 1 die of value out of the Lizard. Because if they make a Lizard and you make it, you have to play the Ancestor Spirit first, right?
Okay. Back it up a little bit. In what way do any of the things you just said don't also apply to Salamander Monk?
I look, Salamander Monk at least still leaves a 1/1 body behind. The Lizard doesn't have recover.
But they have PB guard. Why would they not guard it? If they're going to guard the 2/1, why wouldn't they guard the 1/1?
They're saying you have to do an awful lot of work to make a 2/1 actually kill that Emberroot Lizard.
And you have to do the same amount of work to make your Sally do it, but only more because the Salamander only has 1 power. That's like, we're not talking about what is good and what's always going to happen. Like, we're not saying you play this 2/1 and it is your plan to beat Lizard.
Carl, I agree.
Saying that if you start this, it's some percentage better than Salamander Monk against this particular unit.
I agree with Carl that it won't always leave a 1/1 behind, but it's going to leave a 1/1 behind 90% of the time, right? I mean, it's got to be a pretty high percentage of time you leave a 1/1 behind.
Sure, but
I mean,
again, like,
I'm just saying, like,
that 1/1 doesn't do anything more than your 2/1 would have done.
Well, I guess we'll see. We'll see how it shakes up. I'm not as high as the rest of the community on these 2/1s.
I'm not real high on him either, but I think that it's a good flex against Lizard.
I think you're going to have to know they're on Lizard, which is fine in an open deck list.
Right.
And then you're going to have to engineer a game state where you actually can make an advantageous attack to kill it. Otherwise, it's going to kill your 2/1, happy as a lark, and get through for, point of damage and something else. And because it's sparked, it'll actually be 2 points of damage in Lulu.
Well, you can't take that into account because that would happen on any other unit besides Lizard also.
Sure.
So, like, that shouldn't be any reason. Like, I mean, will it always work? No. Will it work some of the time? Yes. Does them having to PB guard your 2/1 open up attacks with your Frostback Bear or something else? Yes. Like, they only get 1 PB guard. So if you,
sure,
like, in whatever deck, not 4-book, any deck, if I, play a Hammer Knight, like, you have to deal with the Hammer Knight, right? If the Hammer Knight gets to attack, you have to PB guard it. Well, now my 2/1 gets to kill your Lizard. Like, it.
After the Lizard has done something, sure. Yeah, the Lizard has to go.
But if my board is Hammer Knight, and you make a Lizard, and you spend your time turning it on, and you attack with it, and it does a damage to my Hammer Knight, like, that's not very impactful. Like, I'm not going to activate my 2/1 book into your untapped Lizard.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's, I think you can make a Salamander Monk on that board still and have a chance to keep your Salamander, like, the Spirit around.
Yeah, but what does the Spirit do?
I don't know. I mean, without knowing all the other situations, I mean, there's a lot of different things that advantage, that 1 die giving you 2 units at 1/1 gives you. We've seen that impact substantially on the meta, and I don't think Emberroot changes that. I
mean, and a lot of the times you're going to pick Salamander, and you're going to have that, but, like, I don't know if you want me to say, Jesse, because like, you asked me where it should be, and I told you, and then you're like, no, I don't think it should be there.
Well, I think it's a possible fallacy. It's a vacuum decision that looks really good in a vacuum, but when you actually think about how the games play, I don't know if it actually does anything. And I think at the end of the day, like if my opponent makes a 2-1, I'm going to be pretty happy about it. It's just they're too easy to remove, I guess is my point. There's just a million sources of I'll deal 1 damage to you. I mean, hell, I walked into a garbage deck the other day that was running Dreadwraith and Small Sacrifice, and Small Sacrifice just ate my lunch. Like,
I like that card, by the way.
I think it's a cool card. Yeah, I think it's a cool card.
I think Small Sacrifice is like something that Oryx should consider, because it's one of those cards that like you don't have to focus it for it to be good, but if you do focus it, it is very good. And because he's not so good at like targeting a singular focus, but he is good at like finding the second copy of any particular book in your spell board through his stuff, that you could get an early focus Small Sacrifice in an Auric deck just through his insight ability and concentration. And set up some cool like tap out thing.
Yeah, I think there's, I mean, obviously there's a lot to explore when you talk about ready spells that are not units in Auric in particular, because the five spell board makes that possible, and the 5 battlefield's not unreasonable for a 5 spell board.
Auric is really good.
Yeah, I don't know if Awakened Auric is necessarily the nuts yet, but we'll see. I'm worried about Law of Fear, looping Law of Fear decks and these prison decks as a whole.
Yeah, the looping Law of Fear thing doesn't have to be Auric. I think it's more efficient in Auric because Auric has the outside win condition.
Well, and you can draw
state,
and you can also off of Insight draw the Recollect if you met
or the other book. Like he just sees so many cards.
Yeah. So, anyways, we hit 8:30, so we'll wrap it up for tonight. But I appreciate the conversation tonight with you regarding this this potential meta, that we're might see in Shufflebus 5.
It's really interesting because like we talk about Lizard, and I assume that all these Lizard decks have to be just like really aggressive. And
probably.
And we talk about like Ash Spirit or just Auric stuff, Law of Fear, and like those decks have to be like extremely defensive. And I don't know what got added to the middle. And that kind of scares me because I think the middle is like where you want to be.
It's hard to find the middle ground. I mean, I think that's going to take some actual tournament data to start to see that develop. Where you can kind of toe the line between, what I would call a real mid-range deck, where you're kind of building up to this big advantage state. I mean, Herald was a control deck, but it also was like a mid-range swing deck in some ways, right? Like where it just kept building big numbers of units to eventually win the game.
It like has that component to it, but like it's more of a control deck. Like it leans more control than.
I'd be really curious to see how like the defensive control decks, like the prison decks that I like to call them prison decks, because they really offset your opponent's primary plan. Where those decks end up landing competitively, because I think somebody will run them competitively. I think that
Ash Spirit's a real card.
Well, I'm Law of Fear and Law of, what is it? Law of Grace, the one that stops the the burn damage from things. I mean, like we saw a match where BD Wayne just had an opportunity to beat a Jessa if he'd have just kept looping the Law of Grace on his Essence Druids, right? Like he would not have lost that game. It would have taken forever to close, but he would have not lost it. And those are the kinds of things that I think scare me a little bit. Just in general, because the game becomes very what's the word I want to use?
We're already playing the game on a different axis than we were when we started.
Right.
Season 4 showed that.
Right.
Like battlefield decks are not the best decks. Yeah. They have to have a battlefield component. And some of them like start out as battlefield decks and then like lean into whatever else, the Jessas specifically. And Warrior says we have time limits now, and that will play a part. Like you can't play like a nothing deck and expect to win unless you can pilot it very quickly.
Well, and I will say that, you know, I'll be curious to see if Orc ends up in time limit, like Orc Prisons. If they end up in time limit, and I think they actually lose in sudden death because they're generally really low on deck when they get there. All the cards
Right, I
are in
agree.
hand.
Unless it's a dedicated mill deck, it'll be behind and
It'll be
degrace.
right, and so then the sudden death pulling cards off the top of the deck and leaning into damage means the awakened state probably isn't fast enough to get there unless they're already within 7 or 8 health in the first place, and then you might get there.
Right. I mean, that's what you've seen playing against the prison decks that I've been playing on stream is like, I set up this nice little prison and then I can't close the game out, so I lose.
Yeah.
And, the time limits just make that happen when the time runs out rather than like me screwing around and then you killing me with the top round swing.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, that's obviously the meta is wide open for Shufflbus 5, which will be very exciting. I do think that
I just want to see somebody play that Noah deck from AshCon.
Well, then play it. Why don't you play it?
Because it probably won't be good in open deck, but I watched that match again today.
It's exciting.
On YouTube, and it's so fun. I am just totally enamored with that deck.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's a cool deck. I mean, that's a Ben Red King special right there. So, yeah. Well, we'll obviously we'll have time to talk with Nick on Thursday about his Shufflebus 4 experience with Jessa.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Jessa specifically. We're talking about...
I don't remember who it was, Waves, that was the player.
I don't remember the player's name either.
But if you look at our thumbnails on our YouTube channel, you'll see the AshCon coverage with a Noah, and it
was from day 3, I think.
Yeah. That's the vid, if you want to watch it. So it's all of the AshCon. All the AshCon stuff is on our YouTube right now, so you can catch anything from last week that you missed.
You can just hear me like gush about that deck through the whole match. Like it was just, God, it was so sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a neat deck. So, all right, well let's wrap it up for tonight. It's been a pleasure to host all of you and be with you tonight, and we will be back Thursday night with more Ashes Reborn with Nick joining us at the top of the show for a little bit of time, and then
we're gonna talk about Jessa. We're gonna talk about Magic Siphon. We're gonna talk about some season 4 recap stuff.
Yep, and then we'll end our season 4 coverage with a recap of the entire tournament. And then we'll get ready here because we're only a few short weeks away from season 5. So if you're not testing for season 5 or you're not signed up for season 5, first off, why not? You got a chance to win some dice, by the way. Here, these aren't the ones that I'll have because these are going to my tournament in October. But I got another set coming from Nick. So, but this will be the set. We'll give it away. I've got a few other things to give away as well. We've got a promo Rin.
We have a promo Rin?
We do.
I saw that picture. I thought that was for Kansas City, though.
Nope. The promo Rin is for Shufflebus 5. And then we got some alt art Misspirits. Sorry. My autofocus does not want to work on
God, look at those thighs.
They're
That's just an Instagram influencer.
Misspirits are hashtag thick.
Yeah, there's a lot of C's in that Misspirit.
That's right. So there'll be 3. We'll draw 3 winners here for season 5. I've got maybe something a little bit exciting to throw into the mix here for season 5, but I'll keep that under wraps for just a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk more about it as we get closer. But thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time. See you all Thursday night. Have a good evening.